And we are live. Welcome to the WP Engine panel on the WP Agency Summit. I'm Jan Koch, your host of the summit, and I am joined by a powerhouse of panelists. So this session is presented by WP Engine, our gold sponsor for the event. And I would like to hand over to our amazing guests on this session to introduce themselves, starting with Jonathan from Click Here Labs.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Jeter. I manage the web development team and digital production team at Click Here Labs, which is a division of a larger ad agency called the Richards Group. We do a lot of WordPress and a lot of other things, but I'm really excited to talk about how WordPress has kind of catapulted a certain part or certain aspect of our web business.
Love it. And Lisa?
I'm Lisa Sabin-Wilson. I am COO and co-owner of WebDevStudios. We are a WordPress design and development agency. And I also write books for WordPress. Kind of keeps me in the loop of what's going on with WordPress with every release. So I do write WordPress for Dummies and been doing that for 14 years. Holy cow.
Love it. And Ryan?
Yeah, thank you, Jan, and thanks everybody for joining us here today. My name is Ryan Ashby. I lead the agency practice here at WP Engine. WP Engine is the world's leading platform for digital experiences and hosting, and proud to represent our agency community as we get close to the threshold of 5,000 partners. So hopefully some of you folks are in the audience today. So thanks for having us.
Wow, it's a pleasure. And Jake?
Hey, I'm Jake Goldman. I'm the president and founder of 10up. We're a roughly 200-person agency focused on making great experiences on the web and in digital, mostly using open source technologies like WordPress to propel our business.
That is exciting. 200 people. That's probably what most people watching this are aspiring to. They are definitely not at the level that you are at. And I would love to hand over the first question to you, Jake, and to tell us a little bit about how you were able to grow the agency so big. And that obviously is a very broad question. So maybe if you could outline like the process of what it was like to go from 10 people to 25 to 50 and so on. What are some of the major milestones that you remember?
Sure, I'll try to do that concisely, and maybe in the process I can disabuse people of the notion that they want to have 200 employees working day to day. I mean, the high level, I mean, for us, we never took $1 of investment. It was always bootstrapped. So the sort of glib answer is it's a one brick at a time process. The core tenets that I think fueled our growth is you plan proactively. You don't wait till you have a new project need to start thinking about who's working on that project. You don't wait until you lose a client or have a shortage of work to start planning for who your next customer. The way we say that internally and sort of the butt of a joke over some years is, 10up is always hiring, even from the beginning when we didn't know if we had that need. We were always interviewing. We were always thinking and planning for what happens if a new opportunity we don't want to say no to lands on our lap. Conversely, on the project side, and if we're not sure if we have the capacity or the right structure on our team to take on work in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, we think it's important to invest in always having those conversations, always planning for what your next projects are. So the most concise version of like how do you build over time is always be planning ahead of what your current needs are for people that can deliver the work in an agency and for the work you need. I guess briefly in terms of major milestones, probably a little bit simplistic in terms of nice round even numbers, but I kind of think of like the 50, 100, 150, even the 200 mark that we're at now as arbitrary stepping stones, probably a lot of smaller ones between the 10 and 50. I feel like 30 was a significant step between here and there. For me, the trick is always thinking about what the right ratios are on your team between the management that you need, both team and personnel management, but also operational management. Like again, proactively, if that's a theme, think ahead to when is invoicing not realistic as the hobby project of your owner, the hobby project of your project managers. When is recruiting not a side thing that all of your directors do, but something that's time to break out into its own distinct craft. I don't know that I would say in humility we've always nailed that timing. I think the challenge is always, when do you make that big investment and that leap ahead? And making a big, like this past year, I think in a perfectly timed bout in January, we hired a full-time CFO to join our company. I probably should have done that a year or two ago in terms of freeing up our time. But I think those questions of when is it time to break out a specialty are the big inflection points.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to hear what Lisa thinks about this. How do you handle this at WebDevStudios?
We avoid the 200 number pretty strongly. We're sitting at about between 45 and 50 right now, and that seems to be our sweet spot. When I joined WebDevStudios in 2012, I think there were 10 employees plus Brad and I, so 12. And we've gradually grown over time, and really it's an organic growth. It's not, we're not trying to keep up with 10 Up and be the big agency that's out there. We're really trying to grow when it makes sense for us, for our clients. We are in that point right now where Jake was talking about, where you're really hiring those dedicated key positions. We just recently expanded our HR department and hired a dedicated full-time, what we call our employee experience coordinator. It used to be our director of operations, April Williams. She was juggling HR and accounting and invoicing kind of all at the same time. And last year we set the goal to kind of split her role apart and really hire somebody who is dedicated to HR, dedicated to employee experience. Because I think when you get to that 45, 50 mark, you've got a lot of people that you need to take care of, and it can't be an afterthought or a part-time job or something that somebody does on the weekends. It needs to be full-time. So it's not just clients and projects and developers. It's also the support and the administrative HR and operational support in the back end.
I love it. And that just goes to show how much work goes into just building the team, not just so much being productive and making sure that your workforce is productive, but also taking care of your employees. And Jonathan, I think you also wanted to chime in.
Sure. I was just going to say we've always had the advantage of being part of a larger organization, right? So, Click Your Lab started in '95 when people said, "Hey, this internet thing might be a thing we need to look into, for our clients." And we've grown and shrunk throughout that process, right? We've been up to probably 150, and now we're down to about 60 or 70. But we have two roles, right? One, we serve the agency clients, right? So any digital needs that any of our clients need, we're there to meet those needs. But we also have our own customers and clients as well. So that kind of the tricky thing is not just having the resources we need for the clients that we know we have, but the ones that we're bringing in as well, right? So to the point of what both of you said, right? It's trying to make sure we have enough resources available for the projects we expect to get. And always be looking for, what's that next opportunity going to be? We've been able to, because again, we're part of a larger group, we've been able to do a lot of, little innovative projects and some, skunkworks type things to say, hey, what are we going to do next with VR and AR and all these other things, while making sure we still focus on the core of, websites, and we do banner ads, and we do all the digital stuff for, an ad agency, but make sure that our developers are always continuing to build that skill set and continue to push themselves, so that when a client comes in and says, hey, I want this, IoT device to do this thing, like we've already been thinking about that and be ready for it.
That is such an important point. Is it general practice, I would say, that you hire before you have the project because the project might be coming on? Or is it something like you try to get the project and then you have to find somebody to deliver it? That's always this chicken and egg thing.
Yeah, for us, it's always thinking about getting the project, but not pulling the trigger just yet, but knowing where you're going with that. And it's a really tricky thing, because a lot of the projects don't come in. You know, you think you got it or whatever, and it goes to another agency, or the budget falls through, or whatever it is. So you can't be stuck in the thing like, hey, we hired up for this job and now it's not here, right? So it's a really tricky kind of wait and see, but make sure you have it ready, because when it hits, sometimes it's like, let's get going. You know,
Yeah.
Are you ready or not? You know, here we go.
The worst.
Yeah, that's true.
The worst thing to do and the worst feeling to have is to be hiring, like in reaction to a project. Like, I don't know, like if you're bringing in big projects and you're hiring for that project, that's risky. That is a huge risk. And it's much better, I feel, to take the risk to hire without the project first and really integrate that developer, designer, whomever they are, into not only what the project goals are and sort of what the project charter is, but also into processes. Like we've got our own process at WebDevStudios for everything. My job as COO is process operations. And, you know, a lot of times if processes fail, we're not being consistent, you know, things just don't go well. So I always feel that hiring before the project and really it's pipeline management and understanding what's in your pipeline, what your confidence level is for each of the items that are in your pipeline, and hiring accordingly. Jake mentioned that 10up is bootstrapped. So is WebDevStudios. Hiring before you get projects is scary because now you've got salaries to pay and you're not guaranteed that that client is going to sign on the dotted line. So you hope you've got a strong pipeline kind of make up for that.
Yeah, I would add for people that are struggling, that might be struggling with how to like take those risks. It's a bit easier for us when we're at 50 people, 70 people, 200 people to say we'll hire a few more people because we might get a project. I know that feeling is very different when you're 10 people, when you're 9 people. I think some of that is obviously the amount of runway that you can give yourself ahead of a project starting. If you can set an expectation of we can start your project in 2.5 months, if you are hiring and have a healthy pipeline, you may still have a chance to bring someone on board and give them a good month to ramp up and get oriented. The other thing that we, even at our scale today, that you should have in your back pocket, I think, as a fallback plan, is a healthy relationships with people that are not necessarily full-time employees, could be partner agencies, could be other contractors, people that don't necessarily want to be a consistent cost, even when they're not productive on your team, but that you know you can go to, and if you have to pay a higher price for it, to sort of backstop you when you need to rush in more work and the stars don't align in terms of team and start date. So if you're struggling with making the leap to hiring and you're trying to build your team, I would say, like, in addition to always be hiring, always be thinking about who your partners are, always be building your relationship with contractors. You might have to pay more for them, but they might be that plan B that you need to pull the cord on if you can't carry all the risk of hiring without work.
That's brilliant advice.
Yeah, I agree. I was gonna say I agree completely. Make sure that and that's what I was saying by, you know, you plan to have the project even if you're not hiring, right? Because you want to make sure you have that bench, right, that you're ready to go to. The other thing I would say is make sure and understand what your focus is, what you're good at, because we, again, as a, you know, we've got all kinds of stuff going on throughout the agency. Like we've had clients come in and say, hey, we want you to work on Sitecore or Kinnico or like all these different things. And some of the worst projects we've had are projects where we took the project, had to hire for that project because we didn't have the resources for it, right? And that's just not the way that I would recommend doing business, right? Focus on your core competencies. Make sure that you have enough availability within those and that bench. But if you're going to take a flyer on some new technology or whatever, make sure that you're prepared ahead of time and you're not just grabbing people to try to you know, make that project work, because that never has worked for us.
What we're seeing, you know, in I would say the smaller agency ecosystem is, especially given the current economic climate, is a more and more building around predictable revenue on offering maintenance and service packages that allow folks to sustain larger teams and therefore take on more projects. So this is something that, instead of just project-based work only, and again, we're seeing this a lot with the smaller agencies, our platform enables the capability to have a successful management, set it and forget it infrastructure, but then add in those additional services on a managed layer to where, hey, we know that we have, this invoice going out and this invoice coming in every single month. We're on a 12-month contract. So we've seen a whole new economy being built as a result of this current economic cycle. And, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's work that the folks on this line would typically take on, but it is absolutely available for that aspiring agency, to build additional revenue streams, to have predictable revenue, to afford the scale and staff necessary for some of those larger projects in the future.
Couldn't agree more with that. And also one thing that I see many small agencies do is they don't charge enough. They really don't charge enough. So my friend Michael Killen has this book called 5-Figure Funnels, where he breaks down how you sell 5-figure projects. And I see many entrepreneurs just struggle with that imaginary number of selling something for $10,000, $25,000, whatever, being afraid of not delivering enough value to the customer. And probably it starts with talking to the first potential customers and leads in the first place, because they are not able to justify 25K on a website. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Like, what does it take to sell these higher level projects so that you can afford staff?
Yeah, I don't know if that's pointed towards me, but we've recently brought on a few experts in regards to selling within the agency space. And I think one of the most prominent things was optionality. So, a Goldilocks solution that allows you to not anchor low, but actually anchor high and find yourself into a middle ground. I think one of the other things is, price the client and not necessarily the solution, because you will give a better value for an organization that has a propensity to spend more. We're not talking about pro bono, or we're doing this for causal type of organizations. But if you happen to land a maintenance agreement with a major organization, they do have that propensity to spend a little bit more. Therefore, you should price appropriately around the client. Now, that's one of the ones that's a little bit more taboo, but and again, this is outside knowledge and expertise that has recently consulted with some of our agencies. Those are two of the top pricing strategies that we see.
Also, for agencies that are starting out, smaller agencies, even agencies our size at 50, people talk a lot about hourly rate. They talk a lot about value pricing for the client. But at the end of the day, it's really, you need to understand what your costs are for that project. Like, we go through and try and average like what our one full-time employee is, to work on a project per day, and try and average out what our cost is going to be for this particular project based on what we know from the get-go. And then look at profitability. Companies like ours, like 10up, like Click Here, like WP Engine, we all need to be profitable in order to move forward and take care of our employees, take care of our clients. So understanding the cost. A lot of times, smaller agencies or freelancers don't take that step to understand, what is it costing me to put 5, JavaScript developers, front-end developers on this project for 8 weeks, and getting that done. So, understanding the cost, I think, is probably just as important as price. Because otherwise you get, agencies or freelancers or salespeople just kind of pulling numbers out of thin air that don't seem to be grounded in any sort of reality.
Where do you get that data from? Do you use like time tracking or project reviews and stuff like that, so that you can assess the profitability after project finished? Yeah,
we do time tracking. We know on average, there are certain types of projects that take a certain amount of time to do X, Y, Z. When you've been doing this for a long time and you do project after project after project, I mean, all projects are different, but a lot of them have the same elements. So you can, confidently estimate what a project is going to take, what types of developers it's going to take, how many weeks, what the QA testing, all of that is going to look like, launch support, and it's all an estimate. When we estimate and average out our average hourly rate, that is taking into not just account the salaries of the developers, but the salaries of everybody who works in the company, their benefits, PTO, vacation, healthcare, all of the benefits that you provide to them. And this is your cost, roughly, per hour.
One other, I think that's great, Lisa. One other, taking a bit of a different direction, another tactical tool that you can use, it's maybe a little bit related to Ryan's point, if you feel uncomfortable stretching up, is you don't have to estimate one option or an approach if you're afraid you're going to overshoot and reach the deal, which is to say, even at our scale and the size of deal that we're pitching, we'll often come into the initial conversation with a range of approaches and price points. In fact, there's even a sort of a psychology of like helping nudge the customer to the option in the middle as being a default gravitation of where they want to land. But if you feel like your average price point is 10K, you're nervous that you're going to overshoot on your market selling it for 25K or 30K, bring a pitch for both. Here's my option. Here are the trade-offs. Here are the sacrifices at 10K. Here's the more, I think Ryan referred to it as like the blue sky option or something. Here's the more golden option. That's at 25K. You might be surprised how often they will latch on to either the high end or something between those two ranges and give you more confidence pitching a higher number.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is actually it's sales, right? It's selling that in. Like there is a value there, but you have to understand what the value is to your customer, right? We have the problem sometimes on the other end because everything in an agency is billable hours, right? So we tend to get these huge estimates and think, well, no, we actually could do it for a lot less than this. So, there's another extreme of that as well, right? But being able to go into clients and say, look, here's what you're asking us to do, right? And if we do it in this way, this is the value you're going to get. You're going to get, more people finding your website. You're going to get more people filling out that form. You're going to get, giving them that ROI for the investment is going to help sell that in, as opposed to just like, hey, it's going to be 10K and you're going to get a website, right? So I think we as developers and as being in this industry, it's really hard sometimes to say, hey, you got to sell yourself. But even if you're not selling yourself, you got to sell the work that you're going to do and the value that the client's going to get. Because because I was way back when I was a one-man agency too, right? And I had that same feeling of, well, I can't charge them $2,000 for this. It's going to take me a day. But knowing, one, like Lisa said, all the costs that you have, right, just to get the knowledge and the skills to where you are as a one-person agency, right, that's not cheap and that's not free. And you're really selling the value. You're selling what it's going to do, how it's going to benefit your customer, and that's what needs to be in line with their expectations.
This might sound obvious, but just one other small point, which is don't be afraid to ask what they're hoping to invest. Might sound obvious, but the number of times I see people uneasy doing that sometimes surprises me. There's the classic like cliche car metaphor or whatever you could bring to the table to help a customer understand that a website can cost $1 million, a website can cost $20, and try to gauge what they're looking to invest. Sometimes they won't tell you, but you might be surprised how often they open up and tell you what they're expecting to invest.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes they'll give you a range too. Like, it's between, we're thinking between 5 and 10. And maybe your solution is the 10, but that's when, like we were saying before, you want to tell them, oh, but you could also add this and this and this to give them here's the other things that would make it even better, to make it that solution that you really want. But hey, for 10 or for 5, whatever that range is, here's what I can build for you. Like always meet that budget if you get it, right? To say, hey, look, we got a $10,000 budget. Here's what we can do for you. It's going to be a great solution. It's going to be just what you need. But you know what? There's more stuff we could do for you. And even if you don't do it now, it's an add-on we could do later. Let's make sure we get a maintenance agreement in place so that we're taking care of your site. Mm-hmm. And you're basically building that customer relationship, which I think is the most important thing, right? Keeping that customer is more important than that first job. Like you definitely need to make money. You need to make sure that you're not losing money on that first one, but getting it at a reasonable cost and doing a good job on an ongoing basis is going to keep them coming back to you. And as their traffic increases, as they start getting more leads, then they're going to come back and say, hey, can we add this thing to the website? And that's where you get that growth.
That's so true. And oftentimes what I found is you have to do a little bit of business consulting in the beginning of a project, because sometimes your customers don't understand why they want a website. They just know they want something, but they don't know how to integrate it into their marketing mix, for example. So what I often recommend is you sell like a project delivery session upfront, a project discovery session upfront, where you just go with the customer over the goals that they have with the website, how to integrate the website into the business, what the website needs to do, stuff like that. Don't do that free, because it delivers immense value to your customer. And then at that point, give them kind of like a document with your findings, and it's essentially the outline site structure and site strategy that you're coming up with after this session. Give that to them, and give them the option to choose whatever web agency they want. And guess what? They will pick you, because you are the one who now understands what they want.
We've recently started, when I say recently, probably within the last year and a half, started selling strategy, what we call strategy only contracts to clients, because they have a lot of ideas and a lot of things that they want to do, but no direction, right? No real direction. Not a lot of thought has been put into, like, what are the top 2 goals? What are the things that you want to do with this website? So we sell them on a strategy only, where it's, 40 hours of really consulting with them and digging into solutions and ideas and recommendations. And out of that, they'll get a variety of things. They could get some wireframes, they could get some, mood boards or style tiles, or even a fully, documented technical project plan. And usually, like you said, Jan, I completely agree with you. Usually at the end of that, they'll go with you and sign that project contract, because now they don't want to have to go through that process with somebody else, because now you've got the understanding of it. At WebDev, we recently, within the last year, created a strategy department where their focus is 100% strategy and discovery for clients. We've got digital and technical strategists, design strategists, who literally focus every single day on working with clients in that discovery sort of needs analysis area.
I totally agree with everyone's premise here. I mean, I think long game beyond winning the deal, if you really want to charge more and you want to operate at that next level, positioning yourself to compete in the ideas and the knowledge economy, not just like the technical, like I say, using your brain, not just your hands, is key to that positioning. And I'm, big proponent of discovery phases. I would say, like, at the same time, I would caution you to withhold all of your ideas and your strategy if you're chasing big fish until you have an engagement. If you're really trying to chase big fish and big deals, I do think there's a certain amount of energy you have to put into building that relationship, giving them a little bit of a taste of what you can bring to the table in problem solving and strategic thinking and consulting before you force them to sign a dotted line contract. When you're competing for larger deals, I think that critical thinking, I think that thought process is in the proposal process, is in the relationship building process. What can distinguish you? So yes to discovery, yes to ideation, yes to strategic consulting. But I also would caution against thinking of that as something you should or have to entirely withhold to be paid if you're playing a long game.
That's a great point. And I wanted to bring on one comment that we just got from Michael, who says that he suffers from the dreaded imposter syndrome, and he just always underquotes the job. I would love to hear your advice for Michael.
Don't we?
Except for
every point in our career suffered from imposter syndrome.
I do daily when I jump on these sessions. Yeah.
Yeah. If there's anybody on this call who says that they haven't, at least, a couple of times in their career, kind of sat there and thought, am I really like doing this? I'm doing this. And I'll never forget, like, when I was a freelancer, my very first $10,000 deal, the client had to tell me to charge that because I wasn't charging enough. And the client was like, take this budget, and it's hard. But you've got the skills, you perform, you've got a history of clients, Michael, maybe that are happy with you in a portfolio of work. Lean on that and build yourself up, man. And like Jake had said, never be afraid to ask. The worst that they can say is no, and don't be afraid to be told no either, because that's how you learn and that's how you grow, and give them those options. Jake had the best advice is to give them 2 options, maybe 3 options, and give them that pitch of prices and options of services that you have. You'll get over your imposter syndrome as soon as you start charging a little bit more the first or second time you do it and it works. You'll move on to the next step for sure.
Yeah, I agree with Lisa definitely on the portfolio aspect. Like if you have work that you've done and your clients are happy, then that's what you can lean on to say, look, I can do this, and I'm in the space I need to be in, and I can charge what this is worth. And what I would say is, as you go into a pitch process or with a new client, it's kind of like a job interview where you don't want, when they say, hey, so how much did you get for that site that you built? Don't ever answer that question. Focus on what they're wanting you to do and what that's worth, because that's what the real question is. It's not, hey, I did this site for $500, right? Because maybe you did, maybe it was a portfolio piece, and maybe it was something that you needed to do to get it on your portfolio. But that doesn't mean that site was worth $500. It might have been worth $5,000, right? So lean on that portfolio, lean on your happy customers to understand the fact that you are doing this, and you are worth what they should pay for that work, right? Again, it's what it's worth to the customer, not what it costs you to do. That's really going to sell that in.
This might be a little too meta to the question, but I would say, also don't be ashamed of your imposter syndrome. I will tell you, it is always the smartest people I know that tell me they suffer from imposter syndrome. I think it's just a fancy way these days of saying you're humble about the value you're bringing, and you're constantly questioning whether you're bringing the right value to your customers. It's up to me when somebody asks that question, it is a positive sign that they are thinking carefully about the value that they're creating, the value that they're bringing. The fact that you have that imposter syndrome probably means that you're going to do good work for them. And you can really make sure you keep your promises.
Really good point.
Yeah, and as a developer, right, it's really easy to get imposter syndrome in this space because it's changing so often, right? Like, what's the latest framework? What's the latest, thing that I need to know, right? You always feel like you're behind. You always feel like, oh, if I just need to learn this one more thing. But no, as long as you're focusing on your core and you can deliver the product, yeah, there's stuff that you don't know. But that's why we, as agencies, right, we bring on people who are experienced in those different things, and we increase the skills and knowledge of the entire agency by bringing that in, as opposed to one person having to focus on 22 different things because it's there's so much coming at us.
I think it's also important to note as well, Jonathan, as you mentioned that, is your client doesn't know what the latest thing is, and that allows you to shield a little bit of that imposter syndrome, because they're not going to be up to speed on the latest and greatest technology.
Yeah, they don't care whether it's React or Vue or Angular. They don't even know what that is, right? They just want a website, or they want something that's going to meet those needs that they have. And as long as you say, hey, this is the best, and it's going to get you, and you build a good product, then yeah, they don't care about that.
And they shouldn't. Yeah, they just should care about the end result. I agree. Yeah, there's another really good question coming in from Jesse K. Can you dedicate your senior management resources to discovery, especially when it's about tech discovery, or would that negatively impact your current work?
I think that's just a question of how you structure your organization, what your management structure is. So we have a lot of managers. The way that we conceive of our director of engineering role is one of their jobs is to work with teams to make sure technical specifications make sense, to consult a little bit at that beginning stage, to make sure that they bring all of their experience such that the plan and the technical plan is set up for success. You may have a different management structure where you have principal engineers that are not considered management who take on that role. I don't think there's a one size fits all answer to that question, but I would not say as a rule, you shouldn't have a management structure that includes some engagement and support for your projects at the strategic level.
I think that with our senior managers, we do have them involved with that discovery. And when you think about organizations and why people get promoted into senior management positions, or hired into senior management positions, it is because of their knowledge and their skill and their experience. And you don't want to lose that at your project level, because at your project level, you might have brand new developers, brand new engineers, or engineers who've been with you for 6 months or a year or whatever. You want to have that cohesive knowledge and experience as part of the project planning and discovery. So they do bring a lot to the table, and that's why they were promoted to senior management. So they're not in it full time, but they absolutely are touching it and consulting with the team.
Yeah, and I would echo, what Lisa and Jake said. Basically, it really depends, right? It depends on what you need for that discovery process. I mean, we have, dedicated UX resources that aren't in management that we need for that discovery process. At the same time, we also have, management, or dev leads, or other people that need to be consulted by those resources, right? So even if they're not leading that process or they're not in it full time, right? Getting that input from the rest of the team is really important throughout that process.
A lot of times senior management has been around a long time, so they know the gotchas in tech discovery. Where an engineer might say, oh yeah, we can do that migration. Absolutely no problem. Where a senior manager will go, yeah, we can, but can we get a sample of your data? Like, we don't need the whole thing, maybe just a dump or whatever, just so that we can see the structure, because the senior manager knows and has been bitten in the past. So I think it's good to have that experience involved.
I think the game is changing slightly as well, not just from an engineering perspective, but you can break everything down into a funnel in regards to, I'm practice the growth equation. So what is our marketing funnel to, get consideration, awareness, the ability to actually make a purchase, then you go into post-sales, et cetera. It's the same with engineering. How do you scope? How do you onboard? How do you implement? How do you launch, et cetera? But the game's changing to a fact where the journey is actually moving towards backwards. It's starting with the customer experience and working its way into the front end. So I feel that whether it's the service delivery or product delivery, but client relations as a whole is providing them with the 360 experience all the way from, the first conversation to retention, delivery, and growth, I think is important nowadays. So, it's one of those things we're experimenting with on the full 360 of, the equation of a customer lifecycle and how the points are now married together. It's not just you have a specialist for pre-sales engineering, you have a specialist for onboarding engineering, you have a specialist for delivery, and that's on the infrastructure side of things. But I feel that it's becoming more of a universal trend across different services, products, companies, and organizations to know end to end what that experience looks like. So I'm a proponent of it. It takes a village and all of those elements.
And that is a fantastic segue into the next topic that just crossed my mind, and that is if we start to sell. Oh, there's a response by Jesse. So Ryan, special shout out to you that he loves your answer. Think we did a good job of answering this question. One thing that came to my mind is as we were talking about increasing your prices so that you can hire staff with a little bit of buffer in the bank account, is you have to keep your client happy. And Ryan, you touched on that with the customer experience. What does it take when you say, for example, you land your first 50K project? How is client communication on that level different than it is on 10K? Whoever wants to take it, I just throw this into the room here.
I don't actually think it's dramatically different. There's more of it. Presumably you're doing more work. You're going to be talking for a longer period of time. At some abstract level, if you're trying to produce, like if the value, the ratio of like how much work you're doing to what you're charging changes, there's some abstract point about being more white glove there, having more relationship level check-ins on an ongoing basis instead of just tactical, the project's almost done, the project's done, kind of project management check-ins. But I think you're just talking about scaling up a volume. If you're not also talking about fundamentally changing the kind of services you're delivering or the service model.
The bigger projects you may have more stakeholders that you're dealing with. Like if you're doing like a small business website for $10,000 or $15,000, you might be dealing with one or two people. But if you're dealing with a large enterprise organization where your budget is 6 figures, you're going to be dealing with 10 or 12 people, content writers, IT people, marketing. So yeah, I think at that point you've got an account manager who's got a larger role in projects that size, as opposed to, you know, the $10,000 or $15,000 one, where the account manager may do a touch base, but it's not, you know, as much, or it's not as frequent or as often.
Yeah, I think with the obviously an increased budget, it means either there's more complexity in the deliverable or there's more complexity on the client side. Because for either one of those, you've increased the budget to deal with the complexity, right? So that's where you're going to get the additional, you know, touch points, the more meetings, less meeting, you know, whatever it is based. It's not just the budget. The budget reflects what that project is, right? So to what both of them said, right? If it's a bigger project and there's more stakeholders, there's going to be more communication, and that's where it changes. It's not the process hasn't changed, right? We still do the same things we do for every project. If we changed it every time we changed a project, right, we would never make any money because we wouldn't know what we were doing, right? So the process is the same. There's just more touch points depending on, you know, again, like, really good example is IT organizations, right? If you're doing a project and it has to integrate with their Salesforce, or it has to integrate with, you know, something on their back end, right? There's going to be a lot of really technical conversations that you're going to have with that group. And then you got to come back and have the marketing conversation with your client to explain what just happened with the IT organization, right? So, you know, or there's more of that communication involved, but it's not less or more based on the budget. It's based on the project.
That's really interesting. Do you think that you need to have a certain size of company in order to get these bigger projects? Or is it possible to be like freelancer or 3-5 person agency to win these big projects?
Depends on your involvement in them. I've seen freelancers involved in large enterprise projects, but they're not managing the whole process. Like maybe they're doing a piece of it. I mean, we've got our first like enterprise large budget client when we were at about 20, maybe 18, 20 people. It does make you like scale really quickly, like sort of in being not being as proactive as you want to be in terms of scaling, but yeah. I don't think you have to be, you know, 200 people large. Sorry, Jake.
Only we can get enterprise projects. So maybe a dumb question, but in this context, what are we describing as an enterprise budget or a large budget?
I will probably say anything above 25K is for the audience watching here considered an extraordinarily big project.
Right. So to some degree, it depends on the organization. I have seen freelancers usually teaming up with other freelancers and sort of forming consortiums, take 25, 50K, 75K projects. Certainly if they have some sort of like ongoing retainer, or they're even doing 15 hours or 20 hours a week, depending on your rates, that can add up quickly. I do think you start to talk more in the 6-figure range. I have seen some people be successful bringing together groups of independents to make that pitch, but I do think you start moving into the 6-figure range, and I think you will encounter reasonable skepticism as a 1, 2, 3 person organization about your ability to handle that work. Partly a function of like literally from a cost basis, going back to Lisa's earlier comments, how are you doing that much work? There's also a risk factor when somebody's reaching deeper into their pockets, 6 figures. Certainly you start getting into 7-figure projects, about the risk tolerance that they have for the stability of your organization. If you're 2 or 3 people, they are going to worry about, are you going to be there in 6 months? Are you going to be there in a year? Bit of a rambly answer, but I think it really depends on what you're talking about as enterprise scale. It does help to have a team that feels stable, that feels solid, that doesn't feel fly by night for larger budgets. I do think if you're talking 25K to 75K, I do think, especially if you can paint the picture of who's working with you and collaborating with you, that you're not trying to do everything yourself. Yes, I think you can get that business.
Great.
I hope that's inspiring, Michael. Michael just said another comment. I'm waiting here for it to pop up. There we go. So He didn't even get over a 1K project. Even not the one you showed me, Michael. That was yeah, okay. We have to have a conversation about this, Michael. That is not if I told, I'm not sure if I can disclose this, so I won't, but I expected that to be like at least a $7,000 project rather than below 1,000. Michael, when it comes to your imposter syndrome, please catch the replay in the WP Engine booth, as does everybody else, please. The replay is in the WP Engine booth. So catch this and watch it again if you're suffering from imposter syndrome. We all have it. It's nothing that is extraordinary. And as Jake said earlier, it's something that makes you think more deeply about what you are doing and gives you a chance to improve your processes, to improve your deliverables. So that is actually a good thing. You just have to take that step out of your comfort zone to ask for more money. What
I would say it's incremental too. So there was 6 or 7 different pieces of advice that were provided that are all very beneficial to help out with something we all suffer from. But I think it's important to pick the one thing and add into it, because that will give you that incremental lift. Then you focus on the next one. But I think it's always important to focus on the one out of all those that you'll see, 1,000 to move to 1,500 to 4 and above. But yeah, I think that there was great feedback across.
And
the
I
board
would echo what
those.
Lisa said, which is it's not just knowing your costs, but knowing what you're worth, right? So if you're saying, hey, I'm here by myself, I want to make $20 an hour, and I can do this in 2 days, right? That's not giving them the value. That's not giving your worth. Okay. So it's not just that. It's if you want to grow, if you want to be a bigger agency, if you want to get those customers, you have to start thinking that way now. You can't just suddenly change from, hey, I did a $150 project for you to now I want a $12,000 one, right? You've got to start figuring out what that means for you and your agency to say, this is where we want to be. This is the value I provide. These are the people that I'm going to be wanting to work with as I grow. And figuring out what those costs are. Even if you don't think you do, you have overhead, right? You have rent, you have software, you have computers. Like all that needs to be built into your rate, not just, hey, I just want to make rent this month. It's a much larger conversation and much something you really need to think about where you want to be, so you can start working on those estimates and charging what you're actually worth.
Brilliant point. And I'd also love to talk about the building up the pipeline of projects that we touched upon really briefly in the beginning of this conversation. I think if you have projects lined up, then it makes everything so much easier, because you somewhat know, you have an estimate and an idea of what money is coming in and what type of workforce you need to deliver those. How do you go about building up that pipeline of leads and projects?
A lot of luck.
I would say, yeah, a lot of luck, right? I would say one place to start is WP Engine, right? They do have agency partners. They funnel work to agency partners, and they have partners of all different levels, right? So just starting there, and different things like that, right? Find word camps, find associations, find your local your local chamber of commerce, right? There are people that need the kind of work that you do. You just really got to get your portfolio built up and got to get the word out that you're available to do that work. And then for us, word of mouth, like just getting those projects done and then going to your clients and, hey, do you know of anyone else, or do you have another job that you need or something else? But that's where you want to be careful and not price yourself out, right? Because if you did the last one for $500, they're going to expect the next one's going to be $500 too. So that's why you really can't start way down at that level. You've got to build, you've got to estimate, and make those projects worth what you're going to be worth when you get your agency up and running.
You're right, Jonathan. Networking is so important. Like, it's so important. Brad, my partner at WebDevStudios, he is probably on a podcast daily, especially since coronavirus came around. Like, he's always on a podcast. He's very podcasty. I'm not. Like I love doing things like this, but he is always talking with, other agency owners, other freelancers, product owners in the space. You just never know. When you're talking with people, you never know who those people are connected to and who those people are connected to. So always be willing to talk about your services, your talents, your, the things that you do, the value that you provide, because you just never know whose ears that might land on.
Yeah, I would totally agree with all of that. I think networking and relationship development is the key. I would say, in addition to like Jonathan mentioned some place called WP Engine. In addition to those kind of options, I would say like other larger agencies in the ecosystem, including maybe some of the people on this screen, are a good place to start building up opportunity. I mentioned earlier, as all of us have gotten larger and have gotten hungry, or like we're very interested in people that are interested in part-time and contract opportunities, that are eager to start, eager to help with some of our overflow as we load balance opportunities. Going to larger agencies or agencies that are complementary to the skill sets you offer can be another way to help you build up your portfolio and your source of business.
Yeah, and I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes jobs are too small for some agencies, right? And having someone, a smaller agency or a freelancer, someone on the bench to do that, right, could be your first opportunity to start working with that agency. So I completely echo that. Get your work in front of people. Network with other agencies, bigger ones, smaller ones of the same size, because those synergies are great. Like, you may have a very specific skill set, but that someone else needs, and they don't have that on their project. And knowing that you have that, it allows them to get you into that project and further that relationship with them, which then leads to more work with other agencies.
I think there's an element of hacking sales as well. So if you're small, there's lots of resources. As I'd mentioned, Blair Earns was somebody that I quoted earlier on the optionality and pricing, as well as pricing your customer. But not only a partnership from a referral perspective with WP Engine, we have a directory, we showcase our partners and distribute opportunities when we have that opportunity. But the ecosystem of publishing that we have. So we have Torque and Velocitize, which showcase a lot of elements to help agencies sell, and any other marketing technology platform out there that you would leverage, based off the size of your agency. So if you feel your SMB, you have organizations like HubSpot that has agency posts, that there's a lot of sales information on how to build a pipeline, how to build a funnel. You can look at, other platforms, but I think in the marketing technology space, align with the products with, the agency size that you have and the marketing tools that are typically used to deliver client solutions. And they have amazing ecosystems, and really it's a rabbit hole that you can go down on different sales processes, methodologies, building funnels, building pipeline, servicing your customers, delivery, time and materials, and how to do these things. And so I always advise, I get 1,000, some people call them spam, I call them resources. I only read about 1% of them a day, but they're there. So, but there's a lot of information out there.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And for everybody who's watching this, make sure to get your questions into the chat, because we have like 5 minutes left before we have to wrap up this conversation, because those people on this call are busy. And I want to thank you, just take the opportunity and thank you for being here with us to share your knowledge. I think Michael already gets a lot out of the conversation, as hopefully all the others do as well. Ryan, can you share a little bit more light on the partner program that you have at WP Engine? Like, what does it take to sign up? How is it structured? Walk us through it, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking, and also Jesse for the question earlier. I've got your payment for the compliment. We'll get it to you later. I'm joking. I do not know Jesse, so as Jonathan had mentioned, we have an agency program that is very inclusive. So there was really not a lot of gate to join our program. Just have an agency and a validated website and email address, and that will allow you to take part in the communications. A small amount of referrals gets you listed into the directory. And I'd mentioned, at the top of the program, yes, we have 5,000 agencies that are now enrolled into the program, but it's very curated to where, the folks on this screen right here, where we've invested 5 years of working together. Jonathan at a couple of locations, and Jake and Lisa at their current, as founding members of their current organizations. And so, those relationships have grown as the mutual clients that we brought on. So, at our strategic level, which every individual listed on here is one of our strategic partners, we provide, the full gamut of co-marketing, driving leads, referrals, thought leadership, training, enablement, product updates, feedback in regards to how we shape our product and our landscape and our future. So a lot of work at that strategic level, but there are multiple tiers that are associated with the program. And so getting a start, I think, is the first part. From there, you can, obtain the content, learn how to grow. We have certifications that we're, be launching real soon, and a really, strong roadmap, both from WP Engine and what we're offering from a partnership perspective. So you can just go to the website wpengine.com and find your way from there to enroll, and we'll work on the process of approving you and set up a conversation.
I love it. And to Jonathan, Lisa, and Jake, what are your experience with this partner program? I mean, obviously you won't say anything bad here, but like, give us some examples of how WP Engine helped you in the daily business.
Well, I'll start off. I've been with WP Engine for almost since they started. Like Brian said, at a couple of different companies, and it was an evaluation process. There are other WordPress hosting companies out there who also have partner programs. So we'll talk about WP Engine here, but go investigate. Right. The advantage to us, again, as a agency partner, is we have direct access to resources within WP Engine for our customers, right? So when our customer's having an issue and we submitted a ticket, we have the ability to go in for that customer and talk to another technical resource or someone for that. It also helps in the sales process. And I would say for agencies that are starting out, use a partner like WP Engine to help you sell in those projects. They've got all kinds of really fancy documentation on hosting, solutions and why you need security, all those questions that potential client's going to ask you about WordPress. They have documentation they can provide to you to help answer those questions, right? And get those proposals and help you with what you need as far as maintenance goes, because some clients don't understand that, hey, once you build a website, you've got to pay hosting, you've got to pay to keep the plugins updated and those kinds of things. So they just have a lot of valuable resources. And in addition to the Torque and the other resources that Ryan mentioned, just for you as an agency or as a developer, they have things you can use to help you sell in those projects and get the business.
From our perspective at WebDev, we really value the partnership. One of the biggest advantages, I guess, or things that I like about it the most is that they approach clients with us as a partner. So we can, co-market, co-sell, not just, the application layer, which what WebDev takes care of, but also the environment itself. And having sales and tech representatives from WP Engine sort of representing that portion of the solution for the client has really been valuable for WebDev and for our clients.
I'll echo what everyone else said in terms of making connections, helping to co-bid and close proximity as partnerships. I would also say they're a great conduit for some of that longer term relationship developing, networking, mapping. I think one of the most significant contributions I think WP Engine's offered this ecosystem and 10up is just the opportunity to have more chances to like this, to get together, to make new connections, to see who's providing new thought leadership or new solutions in the space, and have those long game conversations.
That's a fantastic way to wrap up this session. I've brought the link to the agency partner program onto the screen right now, so feel free to follow that. Obviously, head over to the WP Engine booth as well after this conversation. If you want to catch the replay, you will see Chris Wiegmann's session there. You will see the webinar we did earlier with David Fogelpohl, and you will see the replay of this session. And you can even spin the wheel to win 3 months discount on WP Engine. with dedicated code just for this summit. So thanks for WP Engine for hosting this event, for hosting this live session today, for supporting the event, for bringing together this powerhouse of speakers. I am honored that I got to moderate this conversation with all of you. And before we wrap up, please share with the attendees how they can learn more about what you are doing. Jonathan, do you want to start with that?
Sure. Clickyourlabs.com is our website. There we have our portfolio of what we do. We do obviously WordPress and all other things digital. And we take clients large and small. So we're excited to be a part of this session with such great, partners/competitors as WebDevStudios and 10up. But I think that's the cool thing about this ecosystem is that we all work together even when we're bidding against each other. It's a lot of fun.
Love it. Lisa.
WebDevStudios.com is where you can find out all about us. We've got a pretty active blog where we're constantly publishing content with a little bit of a developer focus. We're also on Twitter, WebDevStudios.com. I appreciate the opportunity, Jan. Thank you. And Ryan, thank you. And WP Engine. Jonathan, I don't know that we've met before. So good to meet you. And Jake, always very, very good to see you.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today, Lisa. And Jake.
10up.com, 10up.com is our website. Similarly, at 10up, at 10up on Twitter is the place to find out what we're up to, and echo Lisa and sharing appreciation for both organizing the event, giving us a chance to share our insights, and good seeing everyone again.
Fantastic. And Ryan, do you want to finish up with pointing people to the agency program again?
Yeah, no, I would say, first of all, you can go to the booth, the virtual booth, the WP Engine booth there. WPEngine.com/agency will give you information in regards to the partner program. Torque is a great resource to stay up to speed in regards to the community and our focus around the community, and WPEngine.com. So really appreciate it, Jan. I really appreciate our partners and panelists that have joined us, and hopefully hope there was value found in the audience. And so looking forward to hearing Michael's story progress. So take care.
Thank you so much. And for the summit, it's WPAgencySummit.com if you want to learn more. Thank you so much for spending time with us.